day, there is still no evidence the Trump campaign colluded with Vladimir Putin. Hundreds of journalists and criminal investigators, tens of millions of taxpayer dollars, more than a year of relentless searching that has basically shut the government down. In the end, nothing. But that doesn't mean we haven't learned a great deal about how our government actually works. We have. Just today, another trove of FBI text messages became public. Last night, the Senate released a criminal referral to the Justice Department against Christopher Steele. He's the shadowy author of the Trump dossier. So there's an awful lot going on. Here are some of the most significant developments in the last 24 hours. Now, you remember in the spring of 2016, President Obama was asked if the public could have confidence that his administration would never tamper with a criminal investigation. He responded unequivocally, quote, "I guarantee that there is no political influence in any investigation conducted by the Justice Department or the FBI in any case, full stop, period." Well, that sounded definitive. And yet newly released FBI texts suggest that may be false. Just 5 months after Obama made that claim, FBI attorney Lisa Page texted senior agent Peter Strzok, with whom she was having an affair, to say this, quote, "POTUS wants to know everything we're doing." Now, keep in mind, at the time that Page wrote that, the Hillary Clinton investigation had been closed, but the investigation of Donald Trump had begun. The FBI clearly understood that President Obama was watching closely. That's the headline from today's batch of texts. There are many more texts on the way. Remember those 5 months of text messages that the FBI somehow lost? Well, they've somehow been found. The Department of Justice has them now. Congress is waiting to get them, so you can expect more revelations to come. Last night, as we said, the Senate Judiciary Committee released a redacted version of its criminal referral against dossier author Christopher Steele. It's a carefully written document, and it's packed with information. It got far less attention than the now famous Devin Nunes memo, but it may tell us much more. For example, the Senate memo released last night explains how Christopher Steele deliberately misled the FBI about the dossier he assembled. Steele told federal investigators he had not spoken to any media outlets about his research. In fact, he'd spoken to many of them, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, Yahoo News, the New Yorker, and CNN. That's not forgetfulness. If this memo is accurate, Steele lied to the FBI, and that's a federal crime. But maybe more important, thanks to Steele's deception, the FBI relied on a Yahoo News report to verify the dossier, when in fact the Yahoo story was itself simply citing the dossier. Circular. It would be pretty funny if it weren't so incompetent. Yet, and here's the striking thing, even after the FBI learned that Steele was lying to them, they continued to use his dossier to justify spying on Carter Page. As the Senate memo makes clear, there are only 2 possible explanations for this. Either the FBI lied to the FISA court by saying Steele had not spoken to journalists before October of 2016, that's one, or 2, Steele lied to the FBI and is therefore a discredited source. Neither one is good. Both are bad. And there's more. The Senate memo describes Steele as a sloppy and reckless researcher, an intense partisan with passionately left-wing views about American politics, who included unsolicited, unverified allegations in his assessments. Apparently, some of those allegations came from Hillary Clinton's own associates. It seems odd, since the Clinton campaign, of course, was helping to pay for the dossier in the first place, but there you go. As the memo puts it in a moment of dry understatement, all of this, quote, raises additional concerns about Steele's credibility. Yeah, that's for sure. In fact, it's hard to see how any fair person could disagree with that sentence. And yet, for some reason, the FBI seemed to have no concerns about Steele's credibility. His work, the dossier, appears to form the basis of this entire investigation. If there's more evidence out there that points to collusion during the 2016 campaign, we haven't seen it. We haven't even heard whispers of it. And in a moment like this, when leaks are the coin of the realm in Washington, when they're the primary way people communicate information, it's hard to imagine we haven't heard of any other evidence. So maybe there isn't any. Is the Steele dossier the entire thing, all they've got? The Steele dossier seems to be the reason we're having this conversation in the first place. That does not inspire confidence. Congressman Matt Gaetz is a Republican representing the state of Florida, and he joins us tonight. Congressman, thanks for coming on.
Good to be on, Tucker.
So I want to ask you about a story that we had last night. The Daily Mail broke that Congressman Schiff, Adam Schiff of Burbank, California, basically the lead on the Russia probe in the House among Democrats, was suckered in a prank phone call into believing that this Ukrainian group had naked pictures of a Russian model Trump was purportedly having an affair with. He then dispatched a researcher or an aide on the committee to call back the number and set up a document drop at the Ukrainian embassy. That seems like a significant story. It's not being covered today. Do you think that's a meaningful thing to know?
Absolutely, Tucker. And Adam Schiff should step aside as the lead Democrat on the Intelligence Committee as a consequence of this scandal. While our FBI and Justice Department were suffering through an Obama nation, an Obama influence with these attempts to influence investigations, you had Adam Schiff off playing footsies with the Ukrainians, trying to get naked pictures of Donald Trump. Adam Schiff has gone from someone with oversight responsibilities to an actual principal in this investigation, engaging with the Ukrainians. And I think for better objectivity, he ought to step aside.
Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm really trying to be open-minded because maybe Trump collaborated with Putin. I mean, I'm waiting for the evidence, but the allegation appears to be this, that Trump's associates, including one of his children, spoke to a Russian lawyer in an effort to get damaging information on the other campaign, on a political rival, Hillary Clinton. Adam Schiff has basically admitted that he sought damaging campaign on a political rival from a foreign government. Why is that different?
Well, and even more analogous would be Jeff Sessions. Jeff Sessions was talked into recusing himself because of a handshake in a greeting line. But here you've got Adam Schiff actually engaging with Ukrainians to try to dig up dirt on the president with seemingly no interest in whether or not the information is true or false or doctored. And so if you use the same standard that's been applied to Republicans to Adam Schiff, he should have no role on the Intelligence Committee as a lead on this issue. And I think that if you look at his credibility with the American people, it's eroded. I mean, it was only a few weeks ago, Adam Schiff was saying if we released the Devin Nunes memo, there would be a national security catastrophe. That's been proven to be false. And so time and again, he's lost credibility. And I think the fact that he actively engaged with these Ukrainian principals, the fact that he goes on Russia Today, the Russian-sponsored television channel, to talk about our intelligence system, certainly indicates that Adam Schiff should step aside.
But that's a level of hypocrisy that would really embarrass most people. I mean, if you're calling for a president to leave office on the basis of charges, standards that you yourself violate, wouldn't you look yourself in the mirror and say, that's too hypocritical, I can't continue to do
Well, and what does Nancy Pelosi think? I mean, while Nancy Pelosi was calling for Devin Nunes to be removed as the intelligence chairman, even though there was an ethics committee investigation that cleared Devin Nunes, that dispositively found that he did nothing wrong, here you've got Adam Schiff clearly engaging in shady tactics, and Nancy Pelosi spent her 8 hours on the floor with a different rambling narrative.
So, really quick, do you I mean, are we out on a limb suggesting that the dossier seems to be the core document that spurred this investigation? Is there other evidence that you know of?
I've seen no other evidence, and the reason you know the dossier is the core piece of evidence is because they had to have Christopher Steele go plant news articles to validate the dossier. So the very author of the dossier has to go create and manufacture other facts to validate the dossier because it cannot validate itself. It has no mechanism to be proven true because it's all false.
Oh, it's like a freshman philosophy class. You're exactly right, though. Congressman, thank you.
Thank you, Tucker.
Stephen Cohen is Professor Emeritus of Russian Studies and Politics at NYU and Princeton, a contributing editor of The Nation, maybe the most famous Russia scholar in the United States. He joins us tonight. Professor, thanks for coming on. So, am I missing? I just want to be absolutely clear because I think this helps inform how we see this investigation. Are you aware of any other evidence at all of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian government other than the dossier?
No, none, but there are two documents that became the foundational sources for the Kremlingate narrative. It was first the Steele dossier, which surely informed the so-called intelligence community assessment in January of 2017. We were told that was the judgment of 17 intelligence agencies. It now turns out to have been the judgment of no intelligence agencies, just a few guys at the top. So that is all that's ever been produced, and it's not credible.
What about, I mean, we know that dossier was at least part of the rationale for the warrant that allowed the feds to spy on Carter Page. Do you think that other people in Trump's orbit during the campaign were spied on by the federal government?
Oh, I don't know. In the article I just published in The Nation, I asked that question. We need to find out. I mean, why did they, for example, get a warrant on Carter Page, who, on the very surface of it, is no threat to American national security, and then on Paul Manafort? We might assume they did it because they thought these two men would be close, even in the same room with Donald Trump, and wanted to surveil him. But let me just make one point, Tucker. What interests me is not who paid for the dossier. We know it was the Clinton campaign.
Right.
But where Steele got this information. And in the article I write, I suggest that it's highly unlikely he got it from his so-called connections in the Kremlin. Now, there's a big attempt underway to rehabilitate Steele. On the front page of the Washington Post today, there's a story that portrays him as a kind of character out of a John le Carré spy novel. And he may well be. An anguished man without a purpose in life, retired for some reason at a very early age, and for hire. So this is the guy who now enters our life and is used. And the larger question that comes to my mind, but you know the answer better than I do, is how many branches of government do we actually have? I was taught we had 3. But what's been going on above with the intelligence services, and not only the FBI, raises a question if there's a 4th branch of government that's influencing not only our politicians, but because they were leaking to the media, what we voters think when we go to vote.
Do you think that the information in the dossier, and you're a credible person to ask this of, do you think it's credible? I mean, do you think it's real? Do you think it came from real sources? It can be verified. It hasn't yet been, but do you think it will be, or is it made up?
Well, we have to deconstruct it. Some of it is true because he got it from open sources, from newspapers. I mean, was it really a mystery? When I was in Moscow over the years, I knew Donald Trump wanted to build a hotel in Moscow. It was widely discussed. It was in the papers. You need to hire a guy for the money they paid Steele to tell you that. We knew, for example, that the oil company that purportedly was going to pay Carter Page zillions of dollars if he would remove sanctions, that had actually been placed by the European Union, not the Americans. It's a preposterous tale, but it was known in Russia, in the newspapers, that they were going to privatize 15% of that oil company. So you could have sat wherever it was Steele or his associates lived and read the Russian press and gotten about 50% of that information in the dossier.
A lot of our intelligence comes from newspapers. That's the shocking truth, as you well know. Professor, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Well, Robin Biro is a former regional director for Barack Obama's 2008 presidential campaign, and he joins us tonight. Robin, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Tucker. It's good to be back.
I think it's important to have an open mind. I've never been a friend to Russia or anything like that, but this has gone on over a year, and it's prevented government from doing the things that government ought to do, this investigation. And so I think it's fair as a citizen to say, what do you got? Like, what's this about? You're accusing people of treason, betraying their country. And the only thing that I've come up with, in looking at it pretty carefully, is this dossier, which is, prima facie flawed. Is there anything else at the bottom of this?
Well, yes, you know as well as I do that to obtain a FISA warrant, you have to have at least 10 forms of evidence, of corroborating evidence. That was just one of them. And, Comey was correct to call parts of it salacious. We don't know whether that investigation is still ongoing. We haven't been privy to that.
Okay,
and there's 5 other investigations.
Right. Tons of I mean, that's all we do in Washington is stage investigations. Right. And look, at a certain point, you think, that's fine. I get it. The allegations out there. Get to the bottom of it. But this is the basis of a partisan war right now. And at some point, the rest of us have a right to know, like, what exactly are you talking about? So you got the dossier. What else is there? Can you point to a single other fact that suggests actual collusion between the Trump campaign and the government of Vladimir Putin?
Now, you're a smart man. You know as well as I do that FBI investigations do not work like that. We are not privy to ongoing information from those investigations.
No, but there are congressional investigations.
We know that people have been charged. We know that there have been charges.
But none of the charges have anything to do with collusion with the Russian government. I mean, you had 2 people charged for things they did long before the campaign and 2 others charged for lying to the FBI. I mean, and let's be real, we both know what that means. It's not a real thing. So let's honestly, like, the whole leadership of your party is accusing people of betraying their country. Do we have any evidence that's real? Like any.
I want to go back to the very first thing that you said, struck a chord with me, because as a veteran, I had the same oath to uphold the Constitution that our federal agents do. So they're just doing their jobs to uphold our way of democracy.
But I'm not attacking our federal. I'm not.
Sure.
I'm not attacking them. I'm talking about our leaders in Congress, our elected leaders, who have gone way out on a limb, accusing people they disagree with politically of working for a foreign and hostile nation. And I think now, after a year, more than a year, it's fair of me to ask, what are you talking about? Do you have any evidence that that's true? And as I said, the only piece I can see is the dossier, which I doubt you will defend because it's impossible to defend. So is there something else that is forming the basis of these allegations?
Is salacious. Yes, like I said, there were at least 9 other forms of corroborating evidence. We are not privy to that information because it's an open FBI investigation.
So do you believe
the public is not?
What percentage of FISA warrant requests are granted by FISA judges? Do you know?
It's something like 98.2%.
Right.
And I agree, that's a lot. And I'm just being honest.
So what? It's a lot. Well, it's obviously fake. I mean, if it's it's like an Albanian election under Enver Hoxha, like you get all the votes. So I think it's fair for me to ask, like, what was the evidence? You've stopped our government from working. Why are you doing that? What do you know that we should know about Trump's collusion with Russia? And the answer is there's nothing. It's this dossier. This is all a bad joke. Then what else is there?
That's one of, I don't want to be so redundant, but it's one of at least 9 other forms of corroborating evidence.
Can you name any of the 9? Can you name any of them?
No, because it's an open FBI investigation.
Okay, so you have faith that they exist.
I don't work at the FBI.
No, right. I understand.
They have to. In order to get a FISA warrant, they have to exist.
Even though over 90% of warrants are granted, which suggests the process isn't real and you don't need real evidence to get one? Okay, so but we should all just
Every legal analyst that I've heard says that these FISA warrants are between 60 to 90 pages. So it can't just be this salacious
So they're long, therefore they must be true? Is that what you're saying? I mean, you're just asking me to have a lot of faith in a system that clearly needs some scrutiny and oversight, and I wonder why I can't have some facts.
Because it's an open investigation. I can't make that any more clear. But I want to point out that GOP is the party of law and order. I feel that this is an attack on the preeminent law enforcement agency in the country.
No, you feel that that's a talking point the Democrats set out this morning, but it's not going to work on this show because
I didn't even know
I actually do believe in law and order, and in order to believe in it, I need to know that the people administering it are on the level, and therefore I have a right to ask honest questions. And I'm not getting any honest answers.
Of course.
Okay.
Because it's an open investigation. I mean, what do you want?
My last question then, since you don't know what this investigation is based on, only the FBI does, and no one making these allegations knows either, can we agree that nobody should accuse anybody else of being a tool of a foreign government until we get that data, those facts?
You'd better believe it. I agree with you wholeheartedly there.
Amen.
I do not like that this has been made a partisan issue. I just want them to do their job. If President Trump is so innocent, let this be run and let this go unimpeded.
Between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page don't simply have implications for the Russia investigation. They're also very embarrassing for the FBI. They tell us more than maybe we wanted to know. In one text exchange, Strzok refers to the Virginia citizens he serves as, quote, ignorant hillbillies. He misspells the word, by the way, irony of ironies, for the crime of not electing Andrew McCabe's wife to the Virginia legislature. Ignorant hillbillies. The text also includes Strzok and Page's shared post-election meltdown. Strzok, who is an adult male, messaged Page in all caps, OMG, this is effing terrifying, he squealed. Page replied, OMG, I am so depressed. Obviously an articulate group. A few days later, Page wrote this: I bought all the president's men. I figure I need to brush up on Watergate. The next day she added, God, being here makes me angry. Lots of highfalutin national security talk. Meanwhile, we have our task ahead of us. What our task was remains unclear. Mark Stein is an author and columnist. He's seen these texts, and he joins us tonight. Uneducated hillbillies, huh?
OMG, Tucker. LOL. I think last time this came up on your show, I described these guys as like John le Carre rewritten by Teen Beat, and I'm glad to say they've managed to keep that up. I don't understand, just to be serious for a moment, nobody ever resigns in Washington unless they're caught up in this Me Too business. So if Lisa Page were to stand in front of a camera and say that Peter Strzok had conducted one meeting wearing Harvey Weinstein's bathrobe, he'd be out. But absent that, nobody resigns. I don't understand why these two are still in government service. We were accused of being bigots by Joy Reid and her chums at MSNBC a week or two back. These people actually are bigots. They think of Virginians as hillbillies. They think of Romanians as sleazy. At one point they're talking about this guy Guccifer, the big internet guy in Romania, who is described as a sleazy Romanian, and Lisa Page struck back that all Romanians are sleazy. They combine the crookedness of Russians with the entitledness of Italians. So what's that? 1, 2, 3 nation states whose entire populations have just been put down. I mean, the banality of this.
Yeah,
I mean, to go back to what Mr. Biro, your previous guest, was saying, he does it. Oh, they're all sworn. They've all taken this oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. Well, they're not. They're just two lovebirds who apparently get turned on by the most by hyper-partisan politics. They are completely unqualified for the jobs they are holding, and why they are still holding those jobs is a complete disgrace to this FBI of which Mr. Biro is so proud.
Well, because no one is ever fired from the federal government. You're more likely to die in the job than to be fired from a federal job. So maybe that's part of the problem. But you sort of wonder, like, what's the FBI response to this?
Well, the FBI response has been to protect itself. You know, this goes right back to when the Bureau of Investigation was set up by 110 years ago, 1908, I think, and Congress was actually so concerned that the Attorney General then, Bonaparte, the guy who was Napoleon's nephew or whatever he was, Attorney General Bonaparte specifically assured Congress that the FBI would not be used to monitor political dissent or to set loose investigations on politicians at the behest of their partisan opponents in the White House. Well, we're seeing more and more clearly that that's actually 110 years later, that's the two things the FBI is doing. They set their dogs on Carter Page because they could get to their political opponents. They are they loose them on a whole collection of Trump associates, basically at the direction of the most...
Literally, in a few minutes, our exclusive investigation into how that company could very well may be tracking your every move. We've got some major developments on that tonight. But first, House Majority Leader Nancy Pelosi delivered the longest speech in House history today. Apparently, she went on for more than 8 hours in an effort to pressure Congress to give amnesty to illegal immigrants.
So now we have the first Republican president in modern times, the first president, really, who is anti-immigrant. To minister to the needs of God's creation is an act of worship. To ignore those needs is to dishonor the God who made us. We're not asking for something off the wall. It is something that is, maybe it is off the wall. Maybe the wall's the issue here. The floor vote will occur soon after I yield back. I had no intention of yielding back, Mr. Speaker. Those newcomers, with all of that hope and aspiration, they make America more American.
Well, went on like this for many hours, as we said. She said a lot of things, but one thing Pelosi said was striking. Listen as she describes how her grandson badly wishes he were of a different race. Watch.
I'm reminded of my own grandson. He had a very close friend whose name is Antonio, who's from Guatemala, and he has beautiful tan skin, beautiful brown eyes, and the rest. And this was such a proud day for me because when my grandson blew out the candles on his cake, they said, "Did you make a wish?" And he said, "Yes, I made a wish." He said, "Well, what is your wish?" He said, "I wish I had brown skin and brown eyes like Antonio." So beautiful. So beautiful. The beauty is in the mix.
Was it healthy to hate yourself for the way that God made you? Nancy Pelosi thinks it is. And her delight says everything about the modern Democratic Party. Certain races are good, others are bad, so bad that it's considered beautiful to hate your own innate appearance and want it changed. And that, Pelosi is saying, is one of the main reasons she supports mass immigration. So America will look different, and in her view, better than it does now. Now, whatever you think of that idea, it is a genuinely radical sentiment. Nobody has said anything like that on the House floor for a long time. They used to, but they don't anymore, and for good reason. Elevating one race over another is the definition of bigotry. Pelosi may not be sharp enough to understand the consequences of what she just said. She may not even know what she's saying. But if you want to live in a country where everyone doesn't hate everyone else for the color of their skin, you ought not to say things like that. Democrats should stop talking like this in public. In the White House, meanwhile, Chief of Staff John Kelly is being attacked for saying that hundreds of thousands of eligible legal immigrants likely didn't sign up for DACA, in part because some of them may have been too lazy. Watch.
There are 690,000 official DACA registrants, and the president sent over what amounts to be 2.5 times that number to 1.8 million. The difference between 690 and 1.8 million were the people that some would say were too afraid to sign up, others would say were too lazy to get off their but they didn't sign up.
Well, the left is howling, of course, and jumping up and down like the hyenas they are. But think about what he said. DACA did exist for 5 years. It was a special carve-out for people brought here illegally under the age of 18. And there were a lot of ways the federal government was helping people sign up for it. There were programs and translators and lawyers, a lot of things available to help immigrants apply. And yet more than 1 million people who are eligible to apply to the program failed to do so. Why is that exactly? And what does it tell us about them? Roberto Hernandez is an immigration activist. He joins us tonight. Roberto, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Tucker, how you doing?
I'm doing great. So I think it's a really interesting question. So the majority of the people who were eligible for this program, which I think is unconstitutional in the first place, but it existed, they didn't sign up for the program. Now, maybe some of them say they were lazy. I don't think that's the explanation. I think they just didn't care. They didn't care about our law. They didn't care about following the rules in a country that's not theirs. And so they didn't. And I think that's worse than laziness, honestly.
You know, Tucker, ay Dios mío. Oh, my God. You know, first of all, I can't believe John Kelly, the chief of staff of the White House of this country, using that kind of language. You know, to me, it's like, it reminds me of the bullies in 3rd grade. And if you really look at why did people not apply? People are afraid, Tucker. Look at all the ICE raids that are going on in this country right now.
But this wasn't. This is not right now.
The fear
this
that
is
people are living in right now.
Right. Okay.
You know, as
so wait, can I ask you a question?
Brown skin that we are.
Don't give me the skin color thing. It's not about that. It's nothing to do with that. These are citizens of other countries.
They're not picking on any other race. They're not picking on any other race. You know how many other
you are
people are here
single-handedly
that are
making me
illegal, that are not
very
Latinos
against
or from
letting
Mexico?
any of these people become citizens, because you're making it a racial question when it's a question of citizenship. So these people are here illegally. Obama said, look, I'm going to let you stay under this program. I'm going to help you sign up under the Obama administration, not Trump, Obama, 5 years ago. And most of them didn't sign up. And now Trump is saying, I'm giving you citizenship anyway, which I totally disagree with, but whatever. That's the fact. But the point is, they didn't sign up. So what were they afraid of? The Obama people were like, we're helping you, give you a translator, and you still won't do it? Why? Because you don't care. That's why. You don't care about being legal. What's the other explanation?
But let's look. Okay, you bring up Trump. Now that you bring up Trump, let's talk about Trump.
It was under Obama, man.
It is, because you know what? He created a crisis for DACA. Simple. It wasn't a crisis until he made it a crisis.
Okay, but Roberto,
it's a distraction for this country.
Okay,
when we have so many other issues and crises that we have in this country, that should not be the topic of this subject of what needs to be fixed in this country.
I couldn't agree with you more. You know, we found common ground on that, but
using it as blackmail.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. Can you? I just look. If I have one goal for this segment, it's to get you to. I want you to just answer this one question. Under Barack Obama, who offered this program to people here illegally, he said, "Look, I'm going to let you stay, give you legal status, and I'm going to help you sign up for it. There's nothing I won't do to help you sign up for it." And most of them said, not interested. I'm turning down the programs, I'm turning down the translators, the safe spaces you're giving me. Why? Don't tell me it's they were afraid. He was asking them to sign up and helping them, and they didn't. What's the answer? Why didn't they do that under Barack Obama? Honestly.
Well, that was temporary. And Barack Obama, quite candidly, failed by not getting immigration reform done the first year.
You're not going to answer my question, are you?
No, I am. I'm trying to answer your question. Didn't Barack Obama promise that he was going to do immigration reform the first year that he was in office?
Does the president make the laws in this country, or does the Congress? Do you know?
It's Congress. But
right, there you go. Good.
Obama
so Congress
also
does, right.
had Democratic control House. Okay. Nancy Pelosi was the head of that. He also had the Senate that was Democratic control.
Okay, so you're not answering my question. You're not answering my question. It's a really interesting question. I think it tells you a lot about this population that we're about to give citizenship to, who will be voting in our next election. So, or at some subsequent election. So I hope we can get to the bottom of that, because it tells us a lot. Roberto, thank you very much. Good to see you. Now, Google has patents, as we told you the other night, for spying on your home, your bedroom, your kids. But they could already be spying on you through your phone, the one that's in your pocket right now. We're not filed for. They show the company's willingness to stick a camera in your bedroom and spy on you and your children, and then, of course, use that information to sell you things. That's how surveillance capitalism works. But currently, Google doesn't have a camera in every bedroom or every home. It does have a phone in millions of people's pockets, though. And the question is, how much information is Google getting from those phones? We put a couple of our smartest producers on this, and then we send Fox News headlines anchor Brett Larson out to investigate. Watch.
We know that Google is tracking us. We agree to it when we set up our phones. So we wanted to figure out what exactly Google is learning about us throughout the day. So here's what we're going to do. We have two identical phones. The only difference between these two phones is this one is in airplane mode. Both of the phones lack a SIM card, and they haven't been set up to access any Wi-Fi networks. So for all intents and purposes, these phones have no connection to a data network. We're going to keep them with us throughout the day. And while I travel around D.C., we're going to figure out just what Google is finding out about me.
Our first stop, Sim's convenience store, just outside our Fox bureau, for a quick coffee. From there, we took a walk to the Capitol and took a quick walk around the Senate office buildings, and then decided to hop in a car and head around town.
Hello. We're going to the Children's Hospital, please.
To run our test, we had to do more than walk the block, so we took a tour around our nation's capital. First, due north to the Children's National Medical Center Hospital, then west to St. Albans School and the National Cathedral. Our tour around town was a 14-mile journey that lasted more than an hour. The entire time, the phones had no access to the internet.
Oh my goodness.
Not a Wi-Fi connection and not any cellular data service. It almost seemed quaint to assume that Google wouldn't even be able to collect data on me.
Let's head back to the bureau, my friend. That church is beautiful.
Google's business model is simple. Collect data on its users and then use that data to sell targeted ads. It's a business model called surveillance capitalism. But does that critical data collection work even when your phones aren't connected?
So we're back here at our Fox Bureau in D.C., and we've got both of our phones exactly how we left with them. The only difference, really, I snapped a couple of bad selfies at the National Cathedral. But otherwise, they have stayed in my pocket for the entire day. So let's find out what they know. This is our man-in-the-middle device. It's basically a Wi-Fi network that these phones are going to connect to once we turn their Wi-Fi on. It's going to pass data through it on the way to Google. But on the way, we're actually going to get a copy of the same data that Google's going to get. We'll be able to decrypt it and then find out where we've been throughout the day.
Within minutes, the numbers rolled in. The phone that wasn't on airplane mode registered more than 100 locations, 130 activities, and even 152 barometric readings. As soon as it hooked up to our Wi-Fi, it transmitted 300 kilobytes of data straight to Google. The phone even logged our exact locations, tracking us all around town, the Capitol, the hospital, the school, and the cathedral.
Now, you may notice what's missing here is the exact route that we took, but it got that data too. It knows when I got out of the car.
The metadata has a time log down to the very second, tracking everything when they think that you're walking, riding, and yes, even getting out of the car.
Okay, so you're thinking, this isn't a big deal. I'll just put my phone in airplane mode. Yeah, we thought of that too. This is the other phone that we had with us that no SIM card also remained in airplane mode the entire time. Let's see what kind of data it captured.
The phone with airplane mode activated actually logged more locations and activities than the other phone, and it also transferred hundreds of kilobytes of data to Google as soon as it was activated.
The only thing that's missing from this map is our stop at the Children's Hospital, but it still knows we were there. There it is. Exiting vehicle, 100% accuracy.
Through complicated user agreements and free software, Google gets users to sign away their privacy for nothing. They're even following you in the places that most people would expect total privacy: government buildings, a children's hospital, a private school, a church. Every move you make, every step you take, Google is watching you.
Now, in a statement to Fox News, Google told us that users who want to opt out of tracking should turn off location history. But doing that is harder than you'd think, and most of Google's apps include hidden queries that automatically sign you up for the surveillance. For now, we will continue looking into how Silicon Valley sells your privacy. But until then, just remember, when you're using a free online service, you're probably not the customer. You're actually the product. Tucker?
Shocking. With airplane mode on, they are still following everything you do, and it automatically updates them. Well, I can't wait to find out what they do with main city budgets. Are the cameras a wise idea? Are they even constitutional? Is it a moment when government goes from being people who are sworn to protect you to people who are trying to exploit you? Travis Grantham is an Arizona state representative. He's trying to ban red light cameras in his state, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Grantham, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Tucker. It's good to be with you.
So is there any pretense, are we pretending that red light cameras are here to help us, or are we just admitting they're here to fleece us, treating us as marks for politicians?
It's pretty obvious what they're here for, and I was taught early on in my political career, which has only been a couple years so far, that if you ever want the answer to something, just follow the money. Ironically, we've had this bill in front of committee. This is the second year in a row. Passed it out of the House last year, and the cities and towns that come in and argue for this type of mechanism and this type of device, it always comes down to revenue, revenue, revenue. I said, well, open up some toll roads in your towns and cities then, and let's just throw these cameras in the garbage.
But I thought government was there to protect you, not exploit you, take your money.
It's a nice thought. The unfortunate reality is that it's an industry that's not only unconstitutional, it's caused a lot of unsafe conditions, but it's also rife with fraud. And you get to this money aspect of it, and one of the biggest problems I have is this privatization of law enforcement, where you're incentivizing a for-profit company to issue more and more tickets to people. And by the way, your Google segment was interesting to me, because there they are harvesting all this data. Redflex, which is one of the big companies here in Arizona that does this, is an Australian-based company, and they end up with all this data that belongs to drivers in their personal lives. It's quite troubling.
So let me ask you a quick question. If you sneak into this country and use our services and our infrastructure, we protect you and keep you from being deported. But if you were to spray paint the front of a red light camera, thereby saving your fellow citizens, you'd probably be arrested, right?
You would. It's happened here, and you would. You'll be arrested, and you'll probably do some time. And
that tells you everything, doesn't it? So, Travis, I can't tell you how much we're on your side. So Godspeed. Tell us if you win. Come back and celebrate. Thank you.
Thanks, Tucker. Will do.
Liberals say enforcing the law was racist, so they're not. They said the same thing about public urination ban in New York City, which is now no longer in place. Is the city getting better? Who cares? That's it for us tonight. Tune in every night at 8 to the show that is the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and especially groupthink. We're fighting back. Good night from Washington. Sean Hannity's next. Hey, Sean.
All right, thanks, and great show, Tucker. Welcome to Hannity. We have a lot of breaking news tonight, and breaking now, we have brand new, just released messages from anti-Trump FBI lovers Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. Now, the Hannity investigative team, we have dug deep into these texts. We will expose exchanges between Strzok and Page that others are not talking about, and two blockbuster memos are now proving that the FBI, in fact, lied to a FISA court in order to spy on the Trump campaign. Now, the unredacted Grassley-Graham document is now showing that the phony dossier made up the bulk of the application to obtain that FISA warrant. Now, there are a ton of details, and they will take your breath away tonight. We will explain it all. Also, Sarah Carter tonight reporting that the Uranium One informant met with congressional staffers and gave explosive testimony about a Russian criminal enterprise operating right inside the United States. This is before the Uranium One deal. Now, Sarah Carter will join us along with the informant's lawyer, Victoria Tunsing. But first, we get to tonight's breaking news opening monologue. All right, brand new tonight, we have even more text messages from Trump-hating FBI officials Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. Now, Senator Ron Johnson has put out a report that is raising questions about President Obama's potential involvement in Hillary Clinton's email investigation. Now, during a September 2nd, 2016 exchange about creating talking points for former FBI Director James Comey to give to President Barack Obama, Page writes, POTUS wants to know everything we are doing. All right, so what exactly did President Obama want to be briefed on? Now, sources close to Strzok and Page, they're telling the Wall Street Journal tonight that this message they sent doesn't have to do with the Clinton email probe and instead was talking about possible Russian interference in the election. So, in light of the new Strzok text, well, we need to know, what investigation did Obama want to be briefed on? It's why tonight we have two very simple questions for Barack Obama and, frankly, everyone else involved in this scandal. Take a quick look.
What did the president know, and when did he know it?
All right, that was Senator Howard Baker. That was during the Watergate investigation, asking very important questions that President Barack Obama and others now need answers to. They got to answer to everybody. We did reach out to Obama's spokesperson. We didn't get a comment from all of them. And by the way, shocking. Also tonight, there's a new batch of text messages that was just released from the Trump-hating FBI lovers, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. It highlights their investigative bias and, of course, their continued hatred of Donald Trump. On August 9th, 2016, Lisa Page writes, well, he's not ever going to become president, right? Right? Now, their hatred for Trump only grows from there. On November 3rd, 2016, only days before the election, Page wrote, well, the New York Times probability numbers are dropping every single day. I'm scared for our organization. Now, the Senate report notes this is likely a reference to the New York Times election forecast, which showed Trump gaining ground at that point in the election. Then on Election Day, November 8th, 2016, Strzok then says, oh, my God, this is blanking terrifying. And the next day, Strzok follows up with a, oh, my God, I am so depressed. And a few days later, on November 13th, here's what Lisa Page texts. Pay close attention to this. Well, I bought all the president's men. I figured I needed to brush up on Watergate. And the following day, Page writes, God, being here makes me angry. Lots of highfalutin national security talk. And meanwhile, we have our task ahead of us. Okay, what task are they talking about? Now, Strzok and Page also called Trump an idiot, lonesome human being, talked about their insurance policy in case he won. So clearly they were abusively biased towards now President Donald Trump. And here's what's very important. Peter Strzok, and to an extent Lisa Page, who was Andrew McCabe's legal counsel, they're at the center of everything in all of this. Now, Strzok was a former top intelligence official at the FBI and signed the documents, remember, to start the Russia investigation. And Strzok also played a key role in the Clinton investigation, even interviewing Hillary and helping James Comey write that exoneration months before the investigation. And, of course, by overseeing the interviews of not only Clinton, but also General Flynn. And by the way, he's the one guy who helped put the fix in, one of a couple. And that allowed Hillary Clinton to remain in this presidential race. Otherwise, very likely, if it was a fair investigation, she probably would have been indicted. And a new text message proves that on September 28, 2016, Strzok says, got called up to Andy's earlier, who we think is Andrew McCabe, hundreds of thousands of emails turned over by Wiener's attorney to the SDNY, the Southern District of New York, includes a ton of material from Spouse. That means Uma Abedin sending team up tomorrow to review.